Sunday. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of True Story Live. Tonight's topic, Healthy Relationships, Part 3, Cats in the Cradle, and the Silver Spoon, Little Boy Boo-Loo, and the Man in the Moon. When you coming home, Dad? I don't know when. We'll get together, though. There you go. Some of you will remember that song, and that's the inspiration for tonight. We'll get into that in just a moment. And I'm excited about tonight's broadcast. This one I got the opportunity to write. This is the third part in the series on healthy relationships. And next week we'll get to hear from Glenn. So we're excited to hear his very individual perspective, which is always enlightening and wonderful to hear. So you have that to look forward to next week. This week, if you're listening, then you get to hear my perspective. And everyone else can weigh in and answer questions just like we normally do. I'm just happen to love this format, and we'll get into all of that in just a moment. First, we'll say hello to the panel. For those of you listening for the first time, my name is Jason. I'm the main host of the broadcast, but I am also accompanied by three great individuals. One of them is my wonderful wife, Jennifer. Jennifer, say hello to the peoples who are listening.
Hello, peoples. Good to be here. Glad to see people in the chat already. Yahoo!
Yahoo chat! I love the chat. Thank you for being here tonight, guys. Also with us tonight is our friend from Ohio, Marisa, who is the newest addition to the panel, and she has just really brought a lot of energy and excitement. And she sings. She hasn't really done that on this broadcast, but does art as well as Jen. Both of them are artists. And just before she says hello, definitely go by Nez Lover's channel. She has a lot of good content on there, and she does a couple usually arts. Friday she did 2 art streams back to back, and she can tell you a little bit more about that. But go to her channel. Jen has been on for the past few weeks as well, so if you want to see some of her art, that's where you can see it. So give that a look-see, and you can do that on Nez Lover's channel, and we'll make sure that she posts the link in here at some point before the broadcast is over, so you can see that in the chat. But Nez, say hello to the people for me, please.
Hello to the people. Hi, Bobby. Hi, Annette. Hi, Jamie. Hello, Believe. Thank you all for being here. Hello to my distinguished panelists. I'm looking forward to digging into tonight's conversation. Please share it out on your social media if you are so inclined. And yes, that's true. The rumors are true. Jen has been doing live streams, art streams with me the last couple of Fridays. Make your way over to my channel and see Jen having fun with her art right along with me. This last Friday, I did a back-to-back stream with my artist friend Floyd Bingo. And right after that stream, Jen joined me in that studio. So please do check it out. And can't wait to jump into tonight's discussion.
Well, thank you for being here, Marisa. And Jen went ahead and popped your link into the chat for you. So that's a good thing. Thank you for doing that, Jen. And we also have our friend from Australia, Glenn. Glenn, if you're there, say hello to the peoples, please.
Hello. Oh, my phone's ringing. Of course.
Of course. So I always asked to do a sound check, and he wouldn't do the sound check. You can't, like 3 minutes before the broadcast started.
Then his phone did it for him.
If you're there, and we've been doing this for about 3 years, and I've said, for the broadcasters, put your phone on mute, and then it won't interrupt the broadcast with a loud ringing sound or music or whatever. But Glenn
he does it for comedic relief, I'm sure.
He does things the way he wants to do it, and doesn't listen to me. So there you go. So I guess when he's done the phone call, then he can say hello to the peoples. But we're all here tonight, and we're going to jump into this topic. And Marisa kind of already said hello to the people in the chat, Jen. So I'm not sure.
She's doing my job.
We
can share.
We can share. Okay.
But we didn't get to say. I don't think she said hi to Jamie. Hey, Jamie, Believe. And I think she got everybody else. Annette, I'm not sure she said hi to Annette. Hey, everybody.
And hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
welcome back.
Oh, that's pretty good. Mine was pretty good too for
Yeah, it
imitating
was.
that. Yeah, not
Potato
bad.
Queen.
Potato Queen. Love it. Love it. Well, thank you for everyone that is here in the chat. If you're listening to playback, we appreciate you just as much, but we like to have people in the chat so that they can answer the questions, and we like to read those as well. I mean, nobody wants to just hear from the four of us, right? I mean, you want to hear from you guys, what your opinions are. So if you're here tonight in the chat and you want to answer the questions, please pop them in the chat as usual. And when I see them, I will ask those questions. And we already have a question, I believe was here earlier, way earlier, like 5 o'clock, it looks like. And he says, hello. What does a mother/son, mother-daughter healthy relationships look like? Or can they be looked at in the same way as one would father/daughter, father-son healthy relationships? If not, why not? So we will get back to that later, and I will start the write-up. Glenn, are you done with your phone call? Or
Yeah,
okay.
I'm good. I'll ring them back. I left you a message in the private chat to tell you, so you probably haven't seen it.
No, I was looking at the regular chat. Sorry.
Yeah, we're good.
We were in the middle of you saying, did you have anything else you wanted to add to say hello to the peoples?
No, I think you added it all. You guys.
Okay.
I was exhausted by the time I got to me.
I'll bet you were. Well, we get to hear from Glenn next week, as I said at the top of the broadcast. So we'll hear his perspective on healthy relationship. But tonight is mine. Tonight's episode, I want to discuss other healthy relationships we might have aside from romantic relationships, marriages, dating, etc. In our last broadcast, Marisa mentioned this, as she is currently not in a romantic situation, and that gave me the idea. I realized that the first two broadcasts we discussed mostly marriage-related healthy relationships. So Marisa made a good point. We should hit on these other relationships as well, because they are just as important to be healthy and to know what that looks like. We all have parents, siblings, friends, classmates, teachers, and people we work with. In these relationships, there can be various levels of relationship, but but do we not hope that they can be healthy as well? That is my focus for tonight's discussion. Tonight's inspirations come from two songs I loved growing up, and it seems to fit the topic in the area of relationships with parents. First one is Cats in the Cradle by Harry Chapin, and also Mike and the Mechanics, The Living Years. And thank you to my wonderful wife that helped me find those. I spent a lot of time looking for songs about healthy relationships and was having a little trouble. There's plenty on love and dating, plenty, but not as many. And there's some of the cheesy ones we all remember, like You've Got a Friend in Me. I mean, not cheesy, but just
like We Are Family.
We Are Family, Sister Sledge,
I kept
and all
seeing that
that
one.
Yeah. So Mike and the Mechanics, Living Years, and I will draw from both songs and what they imply to make some important points, though those links are in the description. Starting with a quote, "You deserve the level of peace you give to others." That's by Kira C.T. Banskin. And also, this is one of the marks of a truly safe person. They are confrontable. That's from our friend Henry Cloud. We've referenced him quite a bit on the broadcast. I admit this is going to favor the father-son relationship more than the other ones because I have more to say about that. However, the songs chosen can apply to mothers and daughters just as well. The Cats in the Cradle song, if you haven't heard it, is the story song with a simple premise. The father is telling his story of his son and how he, the son, tried to spend time with him, the father, but he was always working, always busy. When the father grew old, he tried to spend time with the son, but the son was always busy. It is a cautionary tale for sure, but what is the point? To me, the point is make time for those who are important to you while you have the time. And then The Living Years is from the son's perspective. He's saying he wished he would have told his father what he felt about the relationship while he was alive, instead of feeling things and having regret about things not shared. There also is a point made right at the start that I completely agree with. It reads, "Every generation blames the one before, and all of their frustrations come beating at your door." How true is that? Do we tend to blame our parents for what we are going through? Do you feel your parents are responsible for your struggles? According to the singer, he thinks so, as he says, so we open up a quarrel between the present and the past. We only sacrifice the future. It's the bitterness that lasts. Do we hold on to any bitterness toward our parents for what we did or did not get from them? What do we do with that as adults? Should we say the things we feel we should say while our parents are alive, or is that unimportant? I relate more to the first song, Cats in the Cradle, than I do the second, as my father's still alive, but he did work a lot and was unavailable to me, both in being gone and his inability to be emotionally present in our relationship. I've talked about some of these things with him, but it has seemed like there's no point to continue to try, as you cannot make someone admit their mistakes. The truth is, we all make the decisions we make. We decide what is more important to us, and often we are not aware of the consequences, or they do not matter. Whose responsibility is it to speak up if our needs are not being met in family relationships? Should we try anyway, even if the other person is not receptive? Is this important for our own health either way? I want to touch briefly on the few other types of relationships as well. I've been a pretty good relationship with my sister, though it has not always been easy. She's not responsible for the difficulty. We both are. We're very different people with very different perspectives and views on how things should be done. However, regardless of these differences, is it important to strive toward a healthy relationship with your siblings? What does that look like to you? I've heard it said, family does for family, and blood is thicker than water, and yet we hear all these stories about unhealthy relationships across the board. What are a few things we can do in order to foster healthy relationships with our siblings? Lastly, in the time we have left, I want to touch briefly on the other types of relationships, such as people we work with, employers, people we meet online, etc. How important is it that these relationships are healthy? What if they are not? Do we have any control over these types of relationships? Well, that's all the room we have for tonight. Please join us next week for Glenn's take on healthy relationships. I look forward to hearing his perspective. Thanks for joining us. Okay, I'll read that again at the end. But there we go. We got some good questions asked tonight. And also, as I said at the beginning, Believe had a question. Maybe he'll pop in at some point so he gets to hear the answer. But we do have a few more guests in the chat. Jen, do you want to peruse the chat and say hello to the new people that came in?
Sure enough. Let's see.
There's a bunch.
Kelly Ann Dean. Oh, Buttercups. Nez. Rachel.
Hi, Buttercups. Hi, Autumn. Hi, Kelly.
Hey, Autumn. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for being here, guys.
Rachel.
Woo! Up to 10 amigos, amigas.
Wonderful. I love it. Well, we have to thank Marisa for promoting the channel, because a lot of the people that have come in recently are Nez peeps, and also Peanut occasionally mentions the channel, so we know some people from over there, and we're wanting to send a bunch of... Sorry. That's okay. Salted Cedar, John? Wow. You guys are great. Thanks for stopping by tonight. That's a good topic, too. Oh, my gosh. Okay. Well, 12 people. We broke the double digits in people that are actually here in the chat. All right. So, again, as we ask these questions, if anyone would like to answer the questions from their own perspective, please do so, and we will read them when we get a chance. Before we get started, I just want to ask, do you guys know both of these songs, The Cats in the Cradle and The Living Years? Do you have any comments? What do you think of those songs? We'll ask Marisa first. Marisa is very musical, and she knows a lot of words to a lot of songs, so I would be really surprised if she didn't know both of these. What do you say? What do you have to say for yourself, Marisa?
Yes, I know both of these songs, and even though I don't feel them towards the dynamics in both of those songs that they present, still, right. It's father, it's parent and child, and right. I certainly can relate to both of those. And the bottom line of both of those songs is life is short, really. And best to say what you need to say now, because none of us are promised tomorrow.
Right, exactly.
Amen.
Good point. Now I know what Jen's going to say because Jen's the one that helped me find these songs. But tell the listeners what you feel about either one of these if you want.
Oh
Jen.
gosh, Cats in the Cradle. It's just a classic song. In the Living Years, it's a song that my dad is very connected to. His dad died a
Yeah.
while back. I don't know how old he was, but I remember being a middle schooler maybe. And we were driving back from Newport News, and
Yeah.
the song came on the radio, and he got really teary-eyed. And I could tell, my dad's always been moved by music, and we've really had that kind of connection, that thing in common.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was eating a Snickers or a Kit Kat or something. And I gave him half of it to make him feel better. I was like, oh, but I was really touched. I was really touched that he was touched. And I don't remember he talked to me about it. I think he just was emotionally moved. And so ever since that memory, that particular song has really moved me because of, just knowing a little bit about my dad's history with his dad.
Yeah.
And how I think there was a lot of unsaid things.
Sure.
And things he wished he had said to his dad or talked to his dad about before he passed.
Sure. Do you agree? Do you agree with what Marisa said? That life is short, and we, she seemed to think that we should say things to the people while we have them. What do you think?
Absolutely. I was going to say no as a joke, but but no, I completely agree. Life is way too short, and she's right. We're not promised tomorrow.
Right.
So it's really important. And how many stories have all of us heard where, someone has passed away and the people close to them have this regret? And Glenn has said many times that he, is direct and puts things on the table right away. And even with his parents, he's really direct with them. And that when they pass, there's not going to be that regret. And what a great place to be in, to not have regrets. Regret sucks.
They do. I don't want that at all. I mean, if I can live a life without regret, I would love to. I mean, I've done some things in the past that I'm not happy about, but I've learned from them, and they have made me the person I am now. So I don't really look at them as regrets because of that, because of having a different perspective now. Now, shortly after when I was paying the consequences for some of the things that I did that I wish I wouldn't have, I certainly had regret then, but enough time has gone by since I've done anything really dumb to feel differently about it. It's like, oh, well, that's over with. Good. All the consequences have been paid. What about you, Glenn? Either of these songs mean anything to you or no?
Cats in the Cradle doesn't. It really is not on my wavelength.
Right.
But the Mike and the Mechanics, I've used that in a broadcast long ago. I really like it.
Yeah, it's a great song.
It's good. I'm just thinking about the comment that was just made about bitterness towards a parent or parents, and I just thought, well, what I'm going to say is that what's the point of being bitter?
Yeah.
What role model does that set for your kids? Because they can feel it even if you don't say it.
Right.
So.
Right. Not a good one.
I don't like it. I think I realise that we all have parents that don't always live up to what may well be some expectations we have, but we have to get real. They're all in their own way, usually trying to do their best.
Yeah. We have to understand that. I agree. I don't think it removes them of the responsibility. I mean, I feel like they have a responsibility for the decisions they made, but understanding that they did try to do the best they can. I've even heard people of the next generation up say, "Well, that's just the way I was taught." I'm not a parent, but my sister has 4 kids, and I would never want to use that excuse. Well, this is the way I was taught, to be shaming and guilting. I want to be responsible for treating them well, regardless of how I was raised. But that's just my view. But we have to be understanding, though. I mean, the key is what you said about bitterness. If you're carrying bitterness, that's just bad all the way around. There's no pretty way to look at bitterness, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I always feel very privileged when I come on here, when I see the stories that are in the chat and from you guys, because I've never experienced any of this toxic stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I sit out to the side, sort of with my mouth open, and think, oh,
Right.
I've been very sheltered or very fortunate or whatever you want to call it, but it's just never been part of my life.
Right.
So,
well, I'm glad.
yeah.
I'm glad it wasn't part of your life. I mean, I'm sure there are a few people untouched by those sorts of things, but I think it's the exception rather than the rule. I mean, that's just my opinion. It seems like there's a lot of people that didn't grow up with the benefit of having just great parents and not any struggle with that. But I mean, I could be wrong. I'm certainly willing to admit I'm wrong. We'll don't say hello to our friend Lon, Fisherman in a Box, is in the house. Please give his channel a visit as well. Very interesting stuff. And he's in Minnesota area. And it's probably as hot up there right now, though, as it is here. It's been in the mid 90s and humid here in the Carolinas. So he'll have to say in the chat if it's as hot up there as it is here. I know it's not in the winter. It gets really, really cold, colder there than it is here. But I know that Jen's parents lived in Virginia and called her mom the other day, or she called, and Jen called her back, and she was saying that it was just as hot there, and they're 5.5 hours northwest of us. It seems like it'd be a little bit cooler, but it wasn't. So anyway. Okay, so we'll dive right in. I just wanted to get everyone's opinion. And my opinion on the songs, Cats in the Cradle came out sooner, and I kind of grew up hearing that on the radio. And I loved story songs all throughout my childhood. Anything that was a story, of course, I loved it. And it's a sad one, this father who's busy working. And I could identify with that. In the song, the way it's written, it doesn't seem like he wanted to not spend time with this kid. He just made decisions. He was probably working hard for his family, and he thought that was the best thing. And I think a lot of people do that. It's not intentional, I don't think, for a lot of people. They just don't think about the impact it'll have on their kids to not be there. They think, well, I need to be a good provider. I need to pay the bills. I need to keep a roof over their head and clothes on their back and food in the fridge. But in the song, the kid just wants them to play catch with them. He just wants to spend time with them. A child doesn't understand bills. It doesn't understand that parents need to work in order for them to have electricity and internet, and they don't get that. I remember my dad freaking out about lights being left on, and I never understood that when I was younger. It's like, why are you so worried about a light being on? It's just ridiculous. And of course, when I got out on my own, I understood quickly why he was freaking out. I still don't freak out about stuff like that, but I get why. I get why people would complain about that. And my grandparents, they had a different level. Growing up in Depression, they had a different generational level of care for certain things, like, don't leave the door open, you're letting in the flies, like things like that. It's like, I mean, as kids, you're just going in and out the door, you're leaving the door wide open. They had a screen door on the hinge, so that one closed. But if we went out the front door, it didn't have a screen on it, so we just leave the door wide open. Get yelled at about that. Anyway, so the Cats in the Cradle song, the basics of it, I mentioned a little bit in the write-up, but then when the father gets old and he's got the time now. He's retired. He's not working anymore, and he's got the time to spend with his kid. But then the kid's just like him now. He's got kids of his own, and he's got a job. It's a hassle. And, he can't find the time to spend time with his dad. And it's just sad, and I'm not saying that if the father had spent more time with him, I'm not making that jump. If he just spent more time with him, then the son would have more time for him. I don't think it's vindictive from the son's point either. It's just that, you make the decisions you make. And then, when you grow old, if you have to take the opportunity, in my opinion, you have to take the opportunity to spend time with people while they're here. I've had friends die younger than me, or 10, 12 years ago. someone that I hadn't talked to, and then we met up again after having not talked for like 20 years. And I was going to go visit him, and before I could, it was the next, it was the weekend, and the day before, I saw a notification that he died. He was 42 years old, and I have regret that we didn't spend more time together while we could. I just didn't. It just didn't think. It didn't occur to me. And I have friends like that, people I grew up with, that after that happened, I've been better about reaching out to people. That there's no reason why we're not talking. It's just, we grew up and we live in different states, and so there's a lot in the song. It is indeed a cautionary tale, and the living years is just is about saying that. It's very much about saying what you want to say to people while they're alive. It's just so important. The two quotes, "You deserve the level of peace you give to others," I thought that was very poignant. And then this is one of the marks of a truly safe person. They are confrontable. I think there's a lot of people that they are very defensive, and when you bring something up, even if it's done in a non, if it's done in a polite, kind way, they seem to react. A lot of people react to being questioned about anything. You can't confront them. So I just thought that was kind of fit into the unhealthy part of a relationship. Okay. All right. Let's get to the questions. Thank you for putting up with my description of the two songs. It's just both of them. There's a lot in them. And from the song, "Every generation blames the one before, and all their frustrations come beating at your door." That's from the Living Years. How true is that? What do you think, Jen? Do you think that each generation blames the one before? And do we carry on the frustrations from our parents? Do they try to instill in us, as the song says, our hopes and fears?
I think to some degree, yes. Maybe not in every case. Blame, that's an interesting word, but is it true?
Yeah.
I think any of us going on a journey of healing childhood trauma, whether it's small or large, we look back as adults and we see, that we think, gosh, I wish my parent would have done a little better in this area or that area.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even understanding a little more, because when you're adults and you're friends with your parents, and I know not everybody has that kind of relationship, but you start hearing more stories about your parents' childhood, because I guess they think you can handle it now as a grown adult. You start to understand the dynamics that were sort of passed on, from what they learned from their parents.
Yeah.
But on the other side, you're also, frustrated that things weren't done a certain way, and you feel like it would have been better if they were, or if you were taught this or shared that with you, or, so on and so forth. But Jamie made a really good point in the chat. As adults, we get to the point where, yes, stuff may have happened or not happened that affected us as kids and young adults or adults. But as adults, we have a choice, to forgive or let go or talk to our parents about it, or, so on and so forth. So some people can get stuck on blaming their parents, and they're just bitter for the rest of their lives, or they just cut themselves off from their parents. Now, sometimes it's warranted, if a parent's toxic, but
sure.
Yeah, I think sometimes we do blame our parents for things. But we're adults. We can do things differently. We can share, I've had many times I've sat down with my parents and shared, things I was disappointed about. And they were very good about, validating, validating my feelings, and even kind of explaining where they were at, during that time, and even apologizing, which has been very healing. And I know not everybody gets that, so I'm very grateful.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Jen. Marisa, what do you think? Does every generation blame the one before, and do we carry on all the frustrations? Do their frustrations come beating on our door? What do you think?
Oh boy.
Oh, you still there, Ness? Was she saying, oh boy, about the question? Or maybe it was her
know.
computer.
Can you hear me? Okay,
there
it
you
was
are.
taking forever.
Oh,
Okay,
gotcha.
good. All
We
right.
gotcha.
We played the blame game. I think we all go through that at, initially. That's kind of the childish approach,
Yeah.
and you either work through that and move on to letting go and forgiving and moving on, or you don't. There's people that
Right.
never let go of the hurt from their parents.
Right.
And
That's
even if
true.
it was abuse and toxicity, the bitterness and unforgiveness is not something you want to hang on to. Even if you never speak to those people again, you can let
Right.
them go in your heart.
Yeah.
And God knows how you feel about each person. And it's worth, even if you don't have contact with those people, you can let them go, let them off the hook, and finally breathe with all of that weight off of your shoulders. And it is a weight. And I carried a weight like that around for a long time regarding a lot of my family.
Yeah.
And, I don't need that. And, there's no more contact with a lot of them, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But at least I've moved forward without hanging on to the blame. So,
Well, that's good.
I'm responsible for how I act and react. The past is the past. So,
Right. Well, thank you, Marisa. You said a lot of good stuff there. I want to say hello to the dude saved us. Welcome. We're glad that you're here. Thank you for stopping in. That idea of it comes back to the bitterness again. It's just a cancer. We've talked about that on other topics that we've discussed. Talked about bitterness. I told the story from my mom's dad. His sister, he and his sister fought about a piece of furniture once, but she held a grudge for 40 years before she died. It's just horrible, and it really got to him. And he tried to make it right, and she just wasn't having it. She wouldn't allow him to make any amends. And it was his piece of furniture. She was jealous that it was given to him instead of her. She wanted it, and that's what it was about. So I promised to never let, especially inanimate objects, come between me and anyone. We're fighting over things instead of, I would understand a little bit fighting over something more serious than that, but still, I wouldn't want to carry the bitterness around. What do you think, Glenn? This idea of generation blaming the one that came up before them, and do we carry on? Do the frustrations of our parents carry on for us? They come knocking on our door. What do you think?
I'm with Jen and the word blame. I've never even thought of it in that terms. That blaming the previous generation?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. What I do notice, I think, I was reading this out to Sandra this morning. I was in the she was in the shower and whatever, and the write up on my phone.
Yeah.
And now I lost my train of thought.
Oh no!
I was 4 steps ahead of myself.
You were talking about blame.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I was give me just the dead air to just refocus. Okay, it wasn't about blame per se. It was the thought that many parents don't adapt to the changes in generations, and therefore there's a gulf between the two, between generations. But as soon as you can't expect the kids to go backwards, but the parents can come forwards. And a lot of parents just want to keep doing what they did 20, 30, 40 years ago. And it doesn't work.
Right.
You've got to come forward. And I think that's where the issue lies, not in the blame. Right. It's just the lack of adaptability of some people.
Right. Well, that's a good point. Yeah. Lack of adaptability.
Finally got there, but did it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So the reason I asked this question, because it's in the song, and I hear we listen to the Narcissistic Resistance channel, and he talks about this. His name is Ali. He talks about this a lot. How the baby boomers have ruined everything for us, and that's why we're all struggling, because of the decisions they made. And growing up, I'd hear people say that like the debt in America is the fault of the people, the generation that came up, when they changed and some of that may be true. Money used to actually mean something. It wasn't digitized, meaningless. We didn't have the Federal Reserve, and that's a topic for another night, and it's not going to be discussed on this channel. But money is worthless. It's just paper, and it hasn't always been like that. So we go into debt and just make more money, and so some people are upset about that. And certainly there's a lot to be said about morals and values that have changed over time, and the decisions that the generation before us and the generation before them, things that they decided. I think particularly in the quote unquote Christian world, some of the people that have grown up in church and have had a lot of this hellfire and brimstone kind of teaching that was popular when I was a kid, it's turned a lot of people off. I believe the message of the Bible is redemption, and we certainly need to be aware of sin. I'm not saying don't be aware of sin at all, and certainly understand the consequences, but it's trying to get people through fear and intimidation rather than the love of Christ. So that's just a couple examples, and that's why it seemed important to me to ask the question. I understand, when you're not hearing as much about it, but I have heard people blame everyone else but themselves for the reason why their life is so terrible. We certainly can, it would be easy for me to blame my dad for certain things that I struggle with. And we're going to get into those questions in a minute. But so I think that not everyone, but the point of the song that Mike and Mechanics was making, he's saying every generation blames the one before, and all of their frustrations come beating at your door. I know that I've heard people say that a lot of parents, they'll parent their kids by their own frustrations. Some living vicariously through their kid. If they had a dream and they didn't get to see that happen for them, like cheerleader moms. If they want to be a cheerleader and they didn't do it, so they get their daughter to do it, or they wanted to get into sports and they were never a sports star. So they get their son to do it, and they get really, really involved with it, more involved than the kids sometimes. Those are just a couple examples of how in parenting we can easily take out our own frustrations, our own crushed dreams, and pass that along. It's an idea that we see in movies and TV shows and books and songs, and it's all over the place. So it seems like it's at least worth asking the question. We talked a little bit about this as a result of the first question, but specifically, do we tend to blame our parents for what we are going through? And do you feel your parents are responsible for your struggles? What do you think, Jen? So it's two questions. You can answer them. You kind of you touched on them a little bit when you're answering the other question, but you want to fill that out a little bit?
Well, I'll be honest. I did go through a period where I was really angry with my parents because I felt like I was just not prepared when it comes to, I just was very naive because I wasn't taught about, manipulative people or toxic people or red flags or narcissism. And I think the dynamic that I grew up with in my family and learning codependency from my mom, I felt like I was served up on a platter from my ex-husband. I felt like just all of these things that I learned, these coping mechanisms and being naive and overly trusting and oversharing, and the oversharing they didn't teach me necessarily. But so yeah, I went through a time of being angry and blamed them. But in the growth that I've had with my parents and our relationship, as adults, and hearing about their childhoods and even their marriage early on and kind of what they were struggling with as a married couple, I got to kind of see why things were the way they were and the things that they were going through. And so there came some understanding as to what they were dealing with. And not just that, it wasn't like they were in a corner like, ha ha ha, we're not going to tell her about toxic people and watch her be destroyed. It was malicious. It really wasn't. I think there were a lot of people that didn't really, that the topic of narcissism is so popular right now. It's really hitting the fan, which in a lot of ways is good. And in some ways it's like kind of like yikes, because it's just being thrown around a bit. But I don't think it was really known and not talked about a lot back then. I think some of the tactics of family, dynamics, and really, I think it was more just accepted back then, and maybe people just didn't know really what it was.
Right.
So yeah, I've come to an understanding, and I've healed through that place of blaming, because honestly, blaming, I don't think it's necessarily healthy.
No.
I think now I look back at it and I think, okay, instead of looking at it as blaming my parents, I can understand it from a healthier perspective of, I'm a little upset they didn't talk to me about certain things. And as a young adult, I could have easily done my own research, but I can't tell you how naive I was. I projected my heart onto the people around me. So because I wasn't a malicious or toxic, manipulative person, I just assumed nobody was, which sounds ridiculous, but that's where I was. It was an immature place of thinking and being. But I've also learned a lot through going through that. So I've been in a place of blame. I did my parents for a while, but just like Jamie had mentioned earlier, I had to get to a place where, okay, the past, I can't go back and do anything, about it. I can't go back to my teens and early 20s and educate myself on things I had no idea existed. Right. So I'm just going to grow and learn and be educated now.
Yeah.
And I've even educated in a loving way my parents a little bit, because even when I got out of my marriage, my mom, I think I mentioned this on the show before, she got a little upset that I was putting a label on my ex, and that really infuriated me. I felt like she was invalidating me. I was like, I had done so much research up to that point on because I was just simply trying to understand what the hell I just got out of. Like, it was such a mind F that for her to say that, it really hurt. I remember Jason was downstairs with me and my parents in the kitchen, and she said that. I left and I went upstairs. And I was so angry and I was trying to calm down. He's like, you just left me.
Like, where did Jen go?
I was so sorry. I was so angry. And I talked to her later about it, and she understood, where I was coming from and apologized. So, we're all in, hopefully.
Thank you, Jen. That was some really good stuff. I'm glad that you're not in a place to blame your parents. And I would agree with you. I mean, when it comes around to me, I'll answer from my perspective, but I agree with what you said. What about you, Marisa? Do we tend to blame our parents for what we're going through? Do you feel your parents are responsible for your struggles? What do you say?
Oh, my parents aren't responsible for my actions and reactions. Not to say we don't learn things when we're growing up, but if we learn bad things, toxic things, it's up to us to say, I don't like how I'm acting. I don't like how I'm treating this person or that. I don't like what happens when I do this or do that. And only you can decide when it's appropriate for you to say enough is enough and make a change. And a lot of times that involves just forgiving and letting go and focusing on improving your own health and moving forward. So no, at this point, no blame for my biological parents, no blame for my grandparents who raised me. They did the best they could with what they had. That's the way I see it. And remember, as a child and even as an adult child of our parents, we don't know all the intricacies and ins and outs of each of their individual mental and emotional and psychological health. We don't know all of their struggles. We might think we do, but we really don't. Right. So, if they went through abuse in their families, of course, they carried it forward if they didn't have the information and the knowledge to realize what those things were and to break free of them. So no blame here.
Wow, you guys really have some great answers. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you, Marisa. I appreciate that. I'll go next, and I'll go to Glenn last because I kind of have an idea how he's going to answer this one. I like Jen. I went through a period of time where, as I was getting older and starting to see some of the traits that my parents had, and when the unfortunate and fortunate thing for me, they were going through a separation, which turned into a divorce right at the age 20-ish for me. And there was a lot of irritation and frustration for me that this was even happening. I remember my blame wasn't necessarily toward the way they raised me at that time. It was get it together, guys. I mean, what in the world? You know, I knew people growing up who had divorced parents, and I just thought this is something I could always count on, that my parents would never get divorced. I mean, not my parents. I mean, that would never happen. Of course, I have a better understanding of why now than I ever have. But back then, it was hard for me, and I did blame them. I was angry, and I reacted out of that anger toward them. You know, my mother, she just announced one day that she was going to college and that she would no longer be cooking meals, and that we had to fend for ourselves, and walked out of the kitchen. I reacted strongly to that. You know, it's like, you know, I didn't know how to cook, and I blamed her for my weight gain and all of that. And I blamed her for other things said to me as a kid that I believed to be true. And I've talked about that a lot on the show. But as I came to a point of maturity where I decided, I looked back at the way they raised me, and did they do some things that I wish they hadn't done? Did I lack some things that I wish they would have taught me? Yeah, absolutely. But a lot of us tonight have said, you know, they did the best they could. And as I was saying to Glenn earlier, I don't think should be just an excuse. You know, like it doesn't wash over everything that they didn't do. I think they should. I would like to have my dad. My mom's passed on, as a lot of you know. And fortunately for me, our relationship over the last 8 years before she died was way better than any of the time before that. And so I'm glad that happened. We talked about a lot of things. We worked a lot of things out, and we just had a deeper relationship than I do with my dad. But I don't know how I'd react if my dad said, you know, Jace, I'm sorry that I wasn't there. Right? I'm sorry that I'm so hard to reach, and you know, I'm emotionally unavailable, and I just probably blow my mind. My mouth would probably drop open. I wouldn't know what to say. I hope that I would be supportive of that, and I would praise him for being honest. That's how I hope I would react. I just think that we should, as adults with autonomy, as we grow older, whatever our parents did to us, we can't carry that on. We shouldn't blame our parents for our own struggles. When we're an adult, we're responsible. Now, when we're kids, they're responsible for us. So, yeah, what they do, what they say, what they don't do, that all does affect us. But we do get to the point as adults where, in my opinion, we have to take that up for ourselves. What do you think, Glenn? Do you tend to blame our parents for what we're going through? Do you feel your parents are responsible for your struggles?
You know, I'd have to say that I would probably have been the one of the most rebellious teenagers, etc., and everything that goes with that.
Oh.
And I thought my parents would have blamed. They were absolute idiots. They knew nothing. I knew everything. Oh, my goodness. And didn't it hit me down the track that I was the one that was the idiot?
Oh, okay.
And they actually did know a lot. And so, no, rather than blame them, I was the one trying to crawl under a rock thinking, holy crap, I stuffed that up big time.
Wow.
Glad.
So I
Oh,
think as I got older, I became much more appreciative of my parents, and the relationship flourished. With each year of age, it flourished more.
Yeah.
So a lot of people say that the relationships sort of drift apart as people, but no, mine took the other path altogether. I realised very much so that very in my face that I didn't know much at all. So that
Wow.
realisation was very helpful.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
So I had great. My parents were great. I couldn't blame them for anything.
Well, thank
That's
you.
for sure. They did their best. Like as was said here, no parents and no person's perfect, but my goodness, they would give you the shirt off their back, and they've done it.
Wow.
They've done stuff for me that is above and beyond the call of what I would see any parent would do for their kids. So I'm privileged. Once again, I just keep thinking, geez, haven't I had it good?
Yeah.
So
Well, thank you. Thank you,
yeah,
Glenn.
thank you.
Wow, great answers, guys. We appreciate that. Give me a lot to think about. So we've kind of addressed this a little bit. The next question. So the next part is from the lyrics of the song. So we open up a quarrel between the present and the past. We only sacrifice the future. It's the bitterness that lasts. So the next question: do we hold on to any bitterness towards our parents for what we did or did not get from them? I feel like we kind of addressed that. Does anyone want to comment particularly on the idea of bitterness? I think each one of us has said pretty much that it's bad. It's bad. We don't want to carry bitterness around. But I don't want to just skim over it. If anyone has anything else you want to say in answer to that question.
about the bitterness?
Yeah. Do we hold on to bitterness towards our parents for what we did or did not get from them?
Mm. Um, I think maybe I have a little in the past, not for super long, because that stuff's like acid in your stomach. It's
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
And what a horrible feeling to feel toward parents that did a lot of things right, and that are human. You know,
Yeah.
they make mistakes and they don't know everything. I mean, obviously, like Glenn said, they know a lot more than you as a kid, you know, but yeah, letting go of the bitterness is it's a really beneficial thing. And just like I think I shared this on one of the last couple shows about after our show about creativity, and I was so wound up and just kind of had a breakthrough after we got off the show with the four of us, and Glenn and Marisa and you were asking me really straightforward questions. And through those questions, I realized that I was hanging on to my anger to try to create from. And I could admit, yeah, there was some bitterness in that anger that I was trying to hang on to push me forward into these creative ventures that I had just been wanting to do my whole life.
Yeah.
And realizing that I think one of the reasons God has allowed there to be a cork in that particular bottle was because of bitterness and
Yeah.
anger. And the very thing I was trying to use to propel myself forward was the thing that was holding me back.
Wow.
So letting that stuff go, it's poison. It's just poison.
Wow.
So,
I
yeah.
agree. Thank you, Jen. The Dude Saves Us says bitterness can look like cognitive dissonance. They look a lot alike. I would agree. They do look a lot alike. I'm going to read one more comment from him from earlier, too. He says, I said to my dad, I'm sorry for your childhood. If you're the product of a dad like you, it wasn't blame, it was wisdom. I didn't know the man. The food he provided was helpful and the shelter. So that seems like that's a pretty good attitude to have. I think, as I was saying earlier, a lot of parents just think that's all they have to do is provide food, shelter, clothing, and they feel pretty good about that. I've even heard, people argue that point. Says, well, did you ever go without food or clothing or shelter? And, if the answer is yes, then that seems to, for some people, glaze over everything else. My dad was always a great provider. I always had food. I was never starving. I never was homeless or anything like that. So maybe I'm selfish. I missed other things that I wish I had had. when there are people that live on the streets. There are people that every night in America and around the world that go without food. So they have other things to consider that I've never had to face. So maybe in knowing that, I could be selfish. I'm not laughing at that. I did just laugh, but it's not funny. It's not funny that people struggle with those things. It's funny that I'm so pampered that I've never had to worry about that stuff. I'm just making the point that sometimes it's not enough just to provide shelter and stuff. But that is a great point. I especially like the point about bitterness. Cognitive dissonance, for those of you who don't know what that is, that's a condition that people have when they have been, what's the word, Jen? When they have been, I can't think of the word.
Brainwashed?
Yeah, brainwashed. Conditioned. Yeah, those are both good.
Programmed.
Programmed. Those are all good, and they're faced with the truth, and they can't see the truth because of all the indoctrination. Was the one that I couldn't think of, but all of yours were just as good as that. So, thank you for that. So I mentioned, as far as my side, this idea of bitterness. I feel like I was bitter for a while. I told the story about in my 20s, and it was more anger than bitterness, but it started to turn into bitterness toward my parents. And as I had said, I was quite rebellious during that time as well. And that when I refer to doing things that I had regret about, that I paid the consequences, that would have been the period of time my acting out toward my parents. And it was so childish. I look back at some of the decisions I made, and it was out of anger. And, I wished I had been, had handled that better. If it were to happen now, it'd be a completely different thing. In fact, they did. If my mom had lived another 6 more days, they would have had a second divorce. Technically, when she died, they are still married, as far as the state is concerned. But she had filed divorce papers. They were divorced, I think, for 8 years, and then she decided to get back with them, and they were together for another 7, 8 years, I think. I may be wrong on the math there, but yeah, didn't work out the second time either, because nothing had changed. I think my mom had changed, but my dad hadn't, and she just felt like she was still married. And I've talked about this before, but I think she wanted to have a place for her grandchildren, my sister's kids. And she knew that he would give that to her, and he did, but it just wasn't enough. I saw her carry bitterness around for a long time. My dad and I were just talking about this other night, that she would forgive her clients for terrible things that they did because they weren't toward her. She would forgive her friends for doing things to her, slights and things like that. But if someone did something and she decided that it was wrong in her mind, she would carry that around with her. She wouldn't let it go. And I think she, with her mom, who, in my opinion, my mom's mom, was the one that hurt her more than anyone. She kept trying. I saw her trying to not be bitter toward her, trying to forgive her and help her. It was just a struggle, I think, right to the end, in my opinion. I think she made progress, but she just couldn't let it go. So it is a cancer. It's not good for anyone. I haven't ever heard or seen someone say, "Oh yeah, bitterness is like a warm bath. It just soothes me." And I think people can lie to themselves and say that, what would they do without the bitterness? If they forgave someone and let it go, what would they do then? Okay. Did I ask everyone this question? Did everyone weigh in? Glenn, did you want to weigh in any more on this bitterness toward parents?
No, but
Okay.
I think it's just indicative that like I said before, if you exhibit bitterness, you're going to set a role model of bitterness. Do you want that? No.
Okay. All right. So the next question is, the next question was, what do we do with that as adults? What do we do with that as adults? And I'm referring to the bitterness there. If a person listening is carrying bitterness, what do they do, Glenn? That's a better question. If
What do they do? They ask themselves and dig deep to try to find out just why they're bitter.
Yeah.
For a start, because unless they do that, how are they going to move past it?
Right.
But the real question, I think, is from your point, what you said, is some people don't want to move past it because it gives them an identity. It gives them purpose, albeit negative. But it's playing the person who can say, I'm bitter, I'm this, my parents are rubbish, they were horrible. They get off on it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but some people do.
Yeah.
They just get off on freaking being a whinger. And whereas they don't have to, it's their choice. No one's forcing them to be bitter.
Right.
So you can see I'm quite reactive because I think, come on, you guys, you have a choice. You can let it go, or you can just carry it on for the rest of your life and let it eat you up inside. And so what a waste.
Yeah.
Absolute waste of a life. I've seen it with your mother and with her mother, and a woman that is a vibrant woman can almost in the fetal position discussing her mother. Now that is not a very good thing to observe, I can tell you.
No.
It's impossible.
No.
But that just shows you that and the effect that other parents, etc., can have on you.
Yeah.
And I know it's very deep seated. I know, but boy, I don't get it, but I can understand. But if you really want to find a way to let it go and you can't do it, seek help. Seek help for this, because it will define you, your whole life. Anger, bitterness, it defines your life, and it will kill you eventually.
Yeah.
Like stress, it's the same thing. So,
yeah. We've talked a little bit on other broadcasts about believing that when you hold in emotions, and bitterness is one of them. That's why we keep saying it's a cancer. There is pretty compelling evidence that it can cause physical issues. Carrying bitterness, it can cause heart problems, cancer. Things can grow in us when we don't let go of this stuff. Now, I'm not a medical doctor or anything like that, but I have seen a lot of proof, and I've experienced it watching other people. And do I know for sure that people that have cancer is because they, suppress their emotions, or they have bitterness? No, I can't prove anything like that. I mean, I don't even know how you'd prove that, but people have tried, and I tend to agree with it. I agree with it because I know people that have been sick for a long time, and one of the things you realize is that they have fear and bitterness, and they don't know how to adequately anger, and they can't express their feelings in a healthy way. I think if I don't know for sure that it causes cancer, I know that it doesn't help you in your health. It's not healthy in any way.
No.
What do you think? Oh, go ahead, Jen.
I was just going to say the author Gabor Mate, I think that's how you say his name, who wrote When the Body Says No. He's a doctor, and he actually did do a lot of, experiments and statistics and all that medical stuff. I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Where, there were people that had autoimmune diseases, and he did, instead of just throwing medicine at them, he really dug into some of their unhealed trauma from childhood or adulthood.
Right.
And there were some patients where it did clear up when they were able to address trauma and work through it and heal, which is pretty amazing. But very interesting book. When the Body Says No.
Yeah, you and I read from that a little bit, right? That's the one? Yeah, that's the one. Thank you for bringing that up. There was no way I was going to think of that the name of the book or the author, but I do know that we discussed it. So, what's your response, Jen? Glenn's response was really good. Do you agree with Glenn? If the question is, if someone listening is struggling with bitterness, what do you say they should do about it as an adult?
Yeah, I really liked Glenn's answer, how he talked about getting down to the why. Why am I feeling these feelings of bitterness?
Right.
If it's possible to talk with the person that you're feeling bitterness toward, I think it maybe not all in all cases. I know for me, hearing more of what my parents went through when they were kids, when they were younger, and the things that they were struggling with in their marriage and within themselves when I was younger, it really helped me understand kind of where they were coming from, which helped the bitterness. Just recognizing that they're humans too, and that they were struggling. Like, they didn't actually get counseling and help until my later teens.
Yeah.
Maybe mid to late teens.
Right.
So they're not the same people they were from back then, and to be able to recognize that as an adult working through unhealed trauma and anger toward my parents, gosh, it's just been beneficial to really dig into kind of what they were dealing with. And I know sometimes, it can be very tempting to hold on to the bitterness, which there's a part of me that doesn't understand why, that want to not let it go. And maybe it's the same as like forgiveness, when it's hard to give forgiveness because you feel like if you forgive, it's in a way making what someone did to you okay.
Ooh,
but I feel like it's really good to understand that letting go of bitterness and forgiveness, those two things hand in hand, it really is about giving yourself freedom, like just being free of that heavy, heavy burden that's just poison.
Right.
Wow. So that would be my answer.
Thank you. Great answer, Jen. Marisa, what do you say? If someone's struggling with bitterness, how do they get over that? What do you think?
First, let me say hi to What's Truth, another Nez Peep who's made their way in here. Southside
What's
Gang,
Truth?
Woo!
I love it.
Thanks again
I
for
love
the
it.
stickers.
Thank
What's
you.
Truth? Okay. The question again was, go ahead, read that again, please.
Yeah. So if someone listening is struggling with bitterness, what would be your advice on how to deal with that as an adult? How do you do that in a healthy way? What should they do?
Well, bitterness, in my opinion and my experience, bitterness comes ultimately from pride. Bitterness means you feel entitled, like you have a right to be angry in a negative way. You have a right to hate. You have a right to not forgive. And that's also an attempt at manipulation and control. Because I don't know about you, but when I've felt that way, you feel like if I'm angry about this long enough and I hold this resentment long enough, well, that, puts that other person or parties that I'm holding that towards under my expectation of what I think they should do. And if they don't do what I'm going to want them to do, then I'm just going to feel this way, whether they like it or not. And all of that negative, doesn't do anybody any good. And going back to quickly, I wanted to touch on the health side effects.
Yeah.
A few weeks ago when we talked about forgiveness, I had done the write-up and I looked on the John Hopkins website, and they were talking about the very real clinical studies that have been done on people and what negative things like bitterness and unforgiveness and anger do to people. It included heart disease, it included stroke, it included anxiety, I listed off all kinds of actual physical manifestations that come from bitterness and anger and resentment. What we can do, if you're a Christian, you can give it to God and you can say, I'm tired of carrying this burden. Please take it away from me.
Yeah.
And if you ask God, he'll help you. And if you're not religious, you can decide for yourself, whether you're a Christian or not, 2 + 2 is still going to equal 4. carrying around negative baggage is still going to result in negative manifestations in you, in your health, in your life, in your other relationships. So what are you going to do about it?
Right.
You ultimately have to decide that you want better for yourself, hopefully, and let that stuff go, whether you do it with your help of a friend or just writing it out in a journal. Some people write things down and then burn them in a fire. Some people just go off by themselves in the woods and shout out whatever it is they need to get off their chest.
Right.
Some people go to a counselor. Some people go to a doctor. Whatever works for you. But again, 2 + 2 is always going to equal 4. And if you're still carrying that around, that equation is always going to be the same unless you make a change in that equation. It's got to be you.
Yeah.
It's a choice. It really is a choice. But there's help out there. Like Glenn was saying, if you need help, please go get it.
Thank you. Thank you, Marisa.
Great answer, Marisa.
It was. I can't do any better than what anyone else says. I'll just just say ditto to everyone else. I want to go back up to something Glenn said earlier. And also the dude saved us is saying a lot. Everyone has some good answers. Jamie has some good answers to things in there. And thank you guys for participating. It gives us a lot other than just the questions that we're asking. We definitely want to hear from you. But Glenn says, how does one have a healthy relationship with anybody if they bring bitterness and anger with them? How does one have a healthy relationship with anyone if they bring bitterness and anger with them? I don't think it's possible. If someone's acting out of a place or trying to have a relationship out of a place of bitterness, and I don't mean just toward you, like if they're not bitter toward you, but they're bitter toward someone else, that's going to affect everything, in my opinion. I don't think it's possible. I have had angry friends. I've had bitter friends. Those relationships fell by the wayside because I just couldn't deal with how angry and bitter they were, because it did affect our relationship, even though it wasn't toward me. Just hearing someone go on and on, my dad this, or this ex-friend of mine did this. I mean, I think you should, like Nez was saying, get it off your chest. I don't mind that. I don't mind if someone is telling me what happened to them and they're trying to do something about it. But when they refuse to let go of it, that's when it becomes a problem. Anyone else want to weigh in on what Glenn said? How does one have a healthy relationship with anybody if they bring bitterness and anger with them? What do you think, Jen?
Say that one more time.
How does one have a healthy relationship with anyone if they bring bitterness and anger in with them?
That's a great question. I know for me, I would definitely be emotionally supportive, validate their feelings, empathize with them. I mean, what they're sharing could be something that I've sort of walked through before. It could be something I've never experienced before.
Sure.
But empathizing is a big deal. And for me, it would be in a gentle way, pointing them to Christ.
Yeah.
He is the healer of all things, especially these kinds of wounds that the weeping of the wound a lot of times is bitterness and anger,
Wow.
But just being very careful. I mean, sometimes when you talk to people about forgiveness, when you're in a place of understanding what forgiveness is, when you come out of that place of thinking it's giving the person the okay for what they did, or even the okay for them to continue doing it to you,
Yeah.
And helping them realize that it's for them, that can be kind of a touchy subject.
Yeah.
I'm in a lot of narcissistic, abuse survivor support groups on Facebook, and I do see a lot of people definitely, speaking against forgiveness. It makes my heart hurt because I can understand that they're seeing it from the perspective of this. If I forgive, it's making what they did to me okay.
Right.
And that's not what it's about.
Right.
Somehow the world has sort of made it to be about that. And sometimes I think about why, like where did that come from? Because I've been there. I've believed that in the past. So yeah, it's just being there for them, letting them vent. Now, I agree with you. If they're stuck in that place, that would be very hard for me to be around.
Yeah.
It's touchy.
Thank you, Jen. Yeah, I'm just saying it's difficult, but you have some practical applications of what to do when that stuff comes up, for sure. And I agree with you. I think, Glenn, do you want to fill in any more of why you asked that question?
Well, I thought it was honestly as obvious as the nose on your face that if you're carrying that inside you, it absolutely stunts you.
Yeah.
You can't fulfill the potential of a relationship whilst you carry this negativity with you.
Right. I agree.
But I was going to ask Jen, when you say go to Christ, or what if you're talking to me? What would you say to me who doesn't? That's not going to cut it.
No, I know. Definitely not.
Is it a different response to what this go to Christ?
It would be sans that. It would be without that particular part. It would more likely be the first part of my answer, where even sharing what you just shared, that it stunts your growth, that it hurts you more than it hurts the person that you're upset with. And just talking to the person about, share with me, vent, like get that anger out. Talk to me about what they did and why it made you angry, and how it made you feel, and help them walk through that and get it out if they're willing to share. And then just try to support them in their healing walk, their healing process.
Do you agree it's extremely difficult for someone who has carried that with them for maybe a long time just to spit it out?
To spit out, meaning to like get rid of the bitterness?
Well, no, not get rid of it, just to speak about it.
Oh.
Speak about it, huh? I've probably met more people that were more willing to talk about it than weren't.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would be difficult if somebody was more reluctant to speak about it.
Yeah.
That would be difficult.
Yeah.
If that were the case, I would just let them know if you ever do want to talk about it, if you ever need someone to vent to or share in a safe place where I'll just listen, I'm here.
Right.
See, I think that's the tough part, because sometimes you meet people who are invested in bitterness and anger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're not going to tell you, because if they tell you what they're invested in, they lose any kind of power that gives them.
Mm. Yeah, and that was one thing I was gonna. Oh, good.
There's a bit. It comes down to the person themselves, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because some people, as you can meet them for 3 minutes and they'll have told you a life story, and other people you can know for 10 years and you know nothing about them.
Yeah.
Right? It
and
really
one thing I
is
was
the
gonna.
person.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, you go.
I was just gonna say one of the things that I thought about while you were talking was sometimes it's sort of like a security blanket or a comfort to some people, I think, to hold on to bitterness.
Yep.
Sometimes some people find their identity, in being bitter. And so there, like you said, Glenn, I forget how you phrased it, but there's an investment in that, and they don't want to let it go.
Wow.
So you actually become a threat to them.
Yeah.
So you see,
yes.
This is convoluted.
Yes.
You are someone that they really can't afford to have in their life. So it's more likely they're going to get rid of you than they're going to embrace you.
Right.
Yeah.
Horrible.
You bring up a great point, Jen, because I know it's just a stage play or opera or whatever, but Les Miserables, the story of a guy that steals bread to feed his family and gets caught and spends a bunch of time in prison. And this prison warden, after he gets out, he chases him forever. And the prisoner, makes something of himself and becomes fairly rich, but he has to change his name because he's hiding from this inspector that is just obsessed with finding him again and putting him back in prison because he feels like that's where he belongs. He's just a self-righteous person. And then skipping to the end, he finds him, and the guy's got the drop on him. The ex-prisoner has the drop on him. He could have easily killed him, and he decides to forgive him. And the guy throws himself in the river because he's carried this around, this grudge he's carried around, the bitterness he's carried around his whole life. And when he's forgiven, he doesn't know what to do. It has driven him all this time. So when you hold on to something that long, it can be detrimental if you don't do something else to replace it. So that was a good point. Jamie said, I have it on the screen. Jamie says, I know from being on both sides of that bitterness equation that you absolutely cannot have healthy relationships while living in bitterness. That's what Jamie says. And I just wanted to read one other thing. The dude saved us says, we all have bitterness because we all have flesh. And if bitterness/anger cause a relationship to strain, hopefully both can ask God to take that burden away. Look to the cross that always brings peace. I would agree with you. But as Glenn was saying, if someone doesn't believe in God, they don't have any relationship with him. I think the things that Jen says are a good way to handle that. I agree with you, dude. The dude saved us. I completely agree with you. It's just not, it just is a reality that not everyone has that belief. It is the answer, in my opinion, to the question. But Jamie also said forgiveness and reconciliation are so linked in people's minds that they often cannot grasp that those are two different things. Sometimes cannot be done in a relationship. I would agree. And the dude agreed with that pretty. So, amen, Jamie. Thank you guys again for sharing so much in the chat. We really, really appreciate it.
I liked Nez's comment. I don't know if you were going to read it. Forgiveness is always possible where reconciliation is not.
Oh,
huge.
That is huge. Yeah, because if reconciliation isn't a possibility, you still can forgive the person and not allow the bitterness to overcome you and become a cancer. That's for sure. Good points.
Yep.
Okay, so wow, just there's so much good stuff that came out of these simple questions that I've asked, and then everyone has their own things to add, which has been great. On the end of this parents thing, before we move on into other, all of these things that we're talking about fit other relationships. I didn't focus as much on other relationships, but I did have a couple questions related to those. But to end this section with parents specifically, from the living years, that idea of the singer of the song wished that he would have said things while his parents were alive or while his dad was alive. So that brought the question for me: should we say the things we feel we should say while our parents are alive, or is that unimportant? What do you think, Jen? Should we say the things while they're alive, while they're here with us, even if it's hard?
I think it would be a good idea. In theory.
It's not as easy as just saying, oh yeah, you should, right?
Yeah, I should. It's hard. Even that quote that you had earlier in the top of the write-up, something about people being safe and being able to share something. What was it?
Confront them, yeah. Confrontable.
Yeah. I think sometimes confronting people, we all have this idea, an ideal response to someone when we share something with them, that might be hard. And then the fear popping in and thinking, oh my gosh, they're going to defend themselves or retaliate or, get mad, because I shared this thing. So it can get a little convoluted. But Again, that's my codependency showing up, where I feel responsible for someone's reaction or their emotions.
Right.
And so I have to remind myself often, okay, I'm only responsible for me. And if I'm responsible for me, I'm responsible for sharing my feelings with someone if I'm hurt or angry or whatever. But their response to me sharing, that's not my responsibility. So,
Right. Right.
But I definitely have to whip myself up into not a frenzy, but I have to kind of give myself a pep talk sometime, depending on the person, I'm sharing with.
Sure.
So I have people running through my head.
Yeah, sure you do.
Okay.
Sure you do. We all do.
I'm sweating over here.
We all do.
I'm like, ooh.
On my end, I have tried to talk to a few people. My parents. I mentioned that my mom and I, our relationship before she died was a lot better, and I'm grateful for that. My dad's still alive. I have said things here and there to him before about the past stuff, and I have said things about present stuff, things he does, behavior, and his reactions are he refuses to take responsibility. We had a discussion at work just the other day. We were talking about the whole gender thing, and how they're wanting other people to just accept that people are whatever they are. We're talking about that, and society in general. We were talking about, and we got on the subject of how colleges seem to be deteriorating. Even from early 2000s, when I went back to school in my late 30s, I didn't see a lot of the stuff that's going on that seems to be going on in colleges today. And my dad said, yeah, when your mom went to college, she picked up on a lot of these things, and then everything was fine until she went to college, and then I was the bad guy, and she had problems with me. Now, we were working and I had lots of things to say, lots of thoughts, and I chose not to say it because I have brought these things up before. You can't make someone take responsibility for their part in anything. But it was clear to me that he, to this day, even with my mom not being around, he blamed her for everything that happened between them. I would have agreed with him if he'd said, well, the way that she handled it wasn't good, but I could have been a better husband. If he took some responsibility at all for his part in it, I would have respected that. My point is about this, should we bring it up? What if we've brought it up and the person is just not responsive to that sort of thing? To me, it's a moot point. I mean, I don't have any regret. If my dad were to die tomorrow, I mean, of course I would be upset. But I don't feel like I haven't, there's anything left unsaid. I have accepted who he is as a person, accepted that he doesn't change. And that's how I have a relationship with him. I don't expect much from him in that way. So my answer to that, should we say it? If the person is approachable at all, if they're confrontable, as the quote said, then yes, by all means, I believe we should say something while they're here with us. And that applies to anybody that we have feelings about. We're holding on to feelings that, because it's for us. It's for us. It's not just for the other person. If we're holding things in, holding feelings in, holding thoughts in, past hurts, it helps just to get it out, in my opinion. So as Marisa was saying earlier, if it's a situation where you're either not able to, they're either dead or they're unapproachable, they're unconfrontable. You can't, they're not going to take any responsibility. I do think it's important to deal with them in other ways, as Marisa said. Jen and I were talking about, we have an idea for another channel, which we're going to do. It's going to deal with narcissism and relationships and things like that. and she was bringing up the idea of river letters, talking about having a segment of what do people do if they have a parent who has passed away or they're unconfrontable. In other words, they're not gonna listen to anything, any feelings that a person has. The idea of river letters, Marisa was saying, you can go out in the woods and yell. You can, write it down on a piece of paper and burn it. The concept that I heard a long time ago from a book, I think it was Goodbye Jumbos, from Louis Anderson. He was a comedian, but it was a really good book about his relationship with his father. His father was an alcoholic, and he struggled with dealing with the way his dad raised him, and he was, kind of mean, and his dad died, and he had all this stuff. He was in counseling at the time, and he didn't get an opportunity to talk to his dad about his childhood and some of the things that he was dealing with in counseling. So his therapist, Louis Anderson's therapist, told him to write all the things down that he would say to his dad, and then set him free on a river, the river letters. And he talked in the book about having done that and how much better he felt. So in answer to the question I put, should we say the things we feel while our parents are alive, or is that unimportant? I feel like it's very important, but if they have died, there are still ways you could deal with it. And if they are just unapproachable, you can deal with the things in the same ways. And that's what I have done. I am able to talk to Jen about anything, and I've shared a lot about my dad, shared a lot about my feelings toward him and things that I didn't get. And part of it is so that she can know me more, know what my life was like growing up and how I became the person that I am today. And a lot of that was my dad did some good things too. It's not either of my parents were just all bad. But there were things that were done or not done that affected me. But as a 53-year-old man, I can't hold on to that stuff anymore. So there are things that a person can do, is my point. What do you think, Marisa? Should we say the things we feel we should say while our parents are alive, or is that unimportant? What do you think?
Absolutely. And unless they are passed on or so toxic that they are inapproachable, if it's going to endanger you, don't go there. But
Right.
like you said, you can unburden yourself by talking about it, writing it down. The river letters idea is fantastic. Writing it down, burning it, going out and yelling somewhere out in nature. Something, not nothing, but something to unburden yourself, and you will feel a noticeable difference. I've been there, and it does work.
Mm-hmm.
So, and ultimately for those who are Christian, taking it, first and foremost to the Lord in prayer. You don't need river letters when you can go to the Lord. I mean, but not everybody has that relationship with God. So there are still things that people can do that are healthy and positive to unburden them. And yes, it's important. If you can say, though, even if they're surly and not necessarily unapproachable, even if they're still angry but approachable, then go there and say that. Write it down, leave a message, leave an email, something. Yeah. You have the right to do that. They may, how they respond, or if they respond, is on them, not on you. And if you're acting out of love and trying to do something healthy and positive, good for you. What they do with it is what they do with it. Yes, do it if you can.
Good. Thank you, Marisa. All right, Glenn, you're up next on this one. What do you think? Should we...
Yeah, okay, sure. I got the question. I agree with Ness, but I want to say something about your mum.
Okay.
Because I think it's relevant to the discussion.
I trust you.
And what she said. During the course of my relationship with her, it'd be pretty obvious that we've had private discussions about her relationship with your dad.
Yeah.
And one thing that she made always very, very clear, even though she was putting a lot of stuff on the table of a private nature, never once did she say that what I'm telling you is meant to evoke sympathy for me and point your dad as the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Never once. So she was very clear that irrespective of how the relationship was, she was not here to apportion blame to him. And I think that that attitude is a brilliant one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very impressive in my opinion. But the other thing that she did acknowledge was that the relationship that was on display between herself and your dad was not necessarily an appropriate role model for your children, for your kids.
Yeah, she admitted that to me as well.
Yeah.
That was during the last 8 years before she died. We had a lot of conversations about that, and she admitted to me that she did some things in her codependency and her parenting out of her pain is the way she phrased it. Parenting out of her own pain and lack. She felt responsible for some of the things that I struggled with. I can't tell you how healing that was for me, just her saying that. Now, at that time, I wasn't holding anything against her at all. I mean, I was an adult, and I'd worked through a lot of this stuff with my own counseling and reading and working through those issues. But her saying that, just saying it, was incredibly healing for me. And it wasn't holding her feet to the fire. Like I said, it wasn't that I needed that or felt like I needed her to admit it. But it was very healing. I was very impressed that she was willing to do that.
I think she wanted to say that for a long time, but I think this is a bit like the relationship between cats and people. Is that the cat who will become your friend is the one where you just don't try to get in its face. You let it come when it's ready.
Wow. Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason she had not probably said things in the period years before. That is how I'm interpreting it. But at that point where the relationship came to an understanding where you open the door.
Yeah.
And then people are willing to come forward, and that's what I don't think a lot of people do. They don't have that door open, and hence people are very reluctant to come because they just think that, well, what's the point? I'm only going to get, like the cat says, well, don't pick me up until I come to you and say I'd like to be picked up.
Right.
The cat will run from the person who grabs them and tries to throw them up in the air, and they're not going to come to that. You get the point. The point is that you've got to be each person has got to be available, and when that happened, of course, it's amazing what revelations can come forward, as you've just said. I think it's absolutely wonderful that you had that conversation. It must have been very uplifting, for sure.
It was, yeah, it was memorable.
Thanks.
Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate it. Gosh, you guys are great. Say hello to Dance, an Irish jig. Jesus is God. Welcome. We're glad that you're here. Thank you for stopping by. I'm assuming that's one of your group, Marisa?
No, but I'm happy to see them in the chat. Welcome, Dance.
Oh, well, they said hi and L. I just assumed. I probably shouldn't assume. But we're glad, however you came to our little broadcast here. We appreciate you. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you so much. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. If you like any of these conversations that we're having, the best way that you can show that is to like, subscribe, and share it out. That's what Marisa always says. I love it. Share it out. Great stuff. Okay, so as I said earlier, a lot of these things that we're talking about fit other relationships, but I didn't want to just focus on the father-son thing. At the top of the hour or earlier, our friend Believe had asked a question, how does this apply to mothers, daughters? And we've been kind of talking about it, and not just a father-son thing. And those were the songs I chose because I'm relating it, to my own dad. And I talk a lot about my relationship with my mother, so that I chose to do it like that. But I'll just, to answer Believe's question from my perspective, I'll just say that to me, it's all the same. You know, what we're talking about as far as bitterness, as far as talking to the person if we can, all that stuff applies to son-mother relationships. It applies to mother-daughter, all of that. It's all the same. There may be different things. You know, females are definitely different than men, but to me, the answer is always the same. Getting it out, talking about it, discussing it is the best choice, in my opinion. So in family relationships, switching gears a little bit, in family relationships with the time we have left, I asked the question, whose responsibility is it to speak up if our needs are not being met in family relationships? Whose responsibility is it to speak up? And the reason I thought of this, and I'll go first.
Ooh. Okay, go first.
Go ahead. Go ahead,
Are
Jen.
you sure? I don't want to get in line.
Go ahead, Jen. Whose responsibility is it to speak up if our needs are not being met in family relationships? And so it's spreading out, not just father, daughter, or anything, just anyone.
I honestly believe, and you guys can correct me if you think I'm wrong, obviously, but I really think it's the person whose feelings are hurt, because the people around us aren't really mind readers. I mean, now there could be a dynamic where a family member knows what they're doing. You know what I mean? It could be that. Right. But a lot of times I feel like people don't know something they've done has hurt someone. And I truly feel like the person whose feelings are hurt should be the one to approach you. And I'll give you an example of the flip side. There's been a couple of times where I felt like a family member was upset with me, and my inclination, the people pleasing and codependent in me that I'm working out, has this compulsion to chase after them and ask them, are you mad at me? Like, we haven't talked in a couple of weeks, you know, why haven't you texted or called? And I've really had to work on not doing that, because I'm learning that if they're upset with me, it's not my job to chase them down and you know, squeeze them until they tell me. I used to do that. I used to live in that place with every relationship I had, and it was exhausting. But I felt like that was my job for some odd reason. So now, back to the first flip side, I have to take responsibility for my own feelings, and part of that is sharing that my feelings are hurt.
Right.
And I could choose not to share. And I think in some instances, it might not be safe to share or beneficial, because you may know the person well enough to know they're not going to care, or they're a narcissist or toxic or abusive or whatever. And so that's where it comes in handy, where you have people in your life that are safe to share with. So even if you can't share with the person that you have those feelings toward, you know, sharing it with someone safe is beneficial.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it's our responsibility. And I remember being in a place even where I felt like, you know, so-and-so should know I'm upset, and they should come and ask me if, you know, what's going on. So I was on both sides of it. I think I played both sides. But it's not, you know, it's not. I think it's our responsibility.
Well, thank you, Jen. Thank you for getting us started. I'm glad you answered first. There's a lot there too. I agree completely with everything that you just said. Particularly the part, the person whose feelings are hurt should speak up. You're right. Most people do not read minds. They don't know what we're thinking or what we're feeling. And I'll throw something on top of that, and people may disagree with this, but they're not thinking of you. Generally speaking, people don't go around every day thinking, hey, did I hurt someone's feelings today? It's just not the way most people's minds work. They're not going to know unless you say something. But in my mind, the responsibility is always on you. It's not someone else's responsibility to check in with you and say, hey, did I say anything or do anything that hurt your feelings? I just have never had that happen. Now, it's different with now we're not talking about love relationships tonight, but I just have to use this by example. Sometimes I listen to the way I talk to Jen, and sometimes I will say something, or I'll hear a tone in my voice, and I will check with her. I'll say, hey, I felt like my tone was a little off. I didn't like the way that sounded. Did that hurt your feelings? A lot of times she says, no, I didn't notice anything, and my feelings aren't hurt. And I was like, oh, great. But I'm self-monitoring. I'm at that point where I don't want to be offensive toward her. I care about her. I love her, obviously. But I'm the same way towards friends. I haven't always been like this, in that I try to regulate the way that I say things or my tone. But I am like that now. It's important to me. I'm careful how I say things and what I say to people, not just Jen, but other people as well. I haven't always been that careful. And I've learned from that, because some people are strong, and what you say isn't going to hurt them no matter how you say it. My tone isn't going to bother them, but that doesn't apply to everyone. Some people, you say something, have any kind of tone or inflection whatsoever, and they seem to get really offended by it. So I've become more careful as I've gotten older and more mature. So there's that. What do you think, Marisa? Whose responsibility is it to speak up if our needs are not being met in family relationships or any relationships? It doesn't have to be just family, just any relationships.
First, let me say hi to Yo Dino. Hi,
Yo Dino.
Thank you for coming in. Yes. Whose responsibility is it if our needs aren't being met anywhere? Let me think. Oh, the answer is our responsibility. Our responsibility.
Is that too
There's
easy
no
of a
police
question,
going
Marisa?
around monitoring who's doing what to hurt who or potentially hurt you. You are responsible for speaking up if your needs aren't being met.
Right.
Certainly. That was a pretty easy question right there.
Okay. Maybe it's not easy for everyone, Marisa. How do you like that tone?
She's not laughing. What's going on?
I think I might have just been triggered.
Oh no.
I'm not feeling validated, Jason. You better validate me right now.
Yes. Yes. I love it. I love it. Thank you, Marisa. What about you, Glenn? Whose responsibility? I think I know the answer. Whose responsibility is it?
Well, I know where you can shove your validation.
I know.
I love you too, Glenn.
He's got a place up there for it.
Validate the cat.
Validate Mario.
Well, I think Nez said it all pretty much, but I just asked the question, well, do you want relationships based on truth or not? Right. So hence I don't think so much like you. Like, I'll just speak. If I'm going to speak to Sandra and say something that's got 4-letter words in it, I'm not thinking, I shouldn't say that to Sandra. I'm just going to say it straight out without probably thinking about it. And I'd say it's her responsibility. If she doesn't like it, she can speak up.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
it's a different attitude, probably. Actually, I was one thing in terms of the question that made me smile was that sometimes I talk to my kids pretty well every day, and when Jonathan was a bit younger, he'd be, if I'd say something, he'd say to me, "No, I'm offended by what you just said," and I thought, "Geez, I've taught him well." Like, it's straight down the line, like, you know exactly where you stand, and you sort it out. But if he sat on that and thought Dad's offended me and didn't tell me, how am I going to know that he's even offended?
Right. That's the point.
That's the point, as Nez said, Marisa. I mean, you can only take responsibility for you, but you can't take responsibility for other people. But if you can both equally take responsibility, well, I mean, you're cruising, aren't you?
Yeah, you are. That, to me, that's what a healthy relationship should be. Both people take responsibility for themselves, and that fosters an open relationship so that you can relate in a healthy way, authentic and open, and you don't have to guess what the other person's feeling. You don't have to assume that they're mad about something or that you've done something to hurt them, because you talk about everything. It really is what True Story Live has been about for a long time, of coming to the table, saying things when you feel them, not holding it in, not stuffing feelings, all those things that we've talked about in so many broadcasts on different topics. It's what it comes down to for me. It's just the way that I want to live, being an authentic person, knowing myself, and knowing the person that I'm in a relationship with as much as they will allow me to know them, is super important.
Well, Cripps, if you have to second guess a person all the time, that just equals stress.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah.
You just don't need it. Who
No.
wants it? I think if you've lived with stress and then you've lived without it, I think you can really appreciate the difference.
Right.
Like emotional stress is just, to my mind, it is so debilitating.
Right.
It almost, I've seen people to the point that they're not even functional as people because of that emotional distress.
Yeah.
And you wonder, well, how on earth could you even be in a relationship, let alone have one that is constructive? You're basically, it's just like, to my mind, is being addicted to some kind of drugs, or just being a zombie. I mean,
Yeah.
what?
Right.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Autumn Dickinson, and we're glad that you're here, Autumn. So we know Autumn from Nez Lever's channel, and I forget where I was talking about this. It might have been on, I don't remember. But Autumn comes into Nez's channel and she posts everyone. I have the right person, right, Marisa? It's Autumn that does that?
Yes, she is my
Yeah.
super mod with all the links. You become part of my
Super
channel.
mod.
She will share out your link. God bless you.
Yeah, I so much appreciate that. I don't know how you have the time just to do that, but she just puts everyone that has a channel, she just posts, and she says things too. It's not just that, but I just thought that that's so cool to have a person that does that. But we're so grateful that you decided to come over to TSL tonight. So thank you. And we hope that you're made to feel welcome, and we hope that you'll come back. We're glad that you're here. So thank you, Autumn. Autumn says, with some of us like me, when it comes to me talking, oh, it went up on me. Sorry. With some of us like me, when it comes to me talking, I know who's tough and who takes things in that way. So I make sure I respect. But the flip side, and then see if you have more. Yeah. So Autumn says, I've never had a hard time backing up others and standing up for others, but when it came to me, I've always been so used to being put down and treated crappy. So I have a hard time with myself. Yeah,
I can relate.
Go ahead, Jen. You want to respond to Autumn? Anything?
Yeah, I definitely can relate. I know for me, it was a self-worth issue. Not saying that that's your shtick, but I felt like everybody was better than me, and I felt like that was probably like the safe place to be. I always felt like, getting off topic here, but I always felt like if I had any self-worth, that was selfish,
right?
Or conceited, or being too self-absorbed. I was always so afraid of going that direction for some reason. So yeah, Autumn, I was always there for people and willing to stand up for people. When it came to myself, I just was sort of a doormat. So I completely relate. You are not alone, girl.
No, it's hard. It's not easy. When we talk about these things, sometimes it seems like, like we have this down perfectly. And no, it's taken a long time to get to this point. I don't assume that just because we're talking about it and saying this is what you should do, that it's going to be super easy for you. I would encourage everyone listening, if you struggle with any of these things, hopefully we're saying some things that will give you some ideas of what to try, but we're not assuming it's going to be easy. This stuff is hard. It's hard to confront people. It's hard to talk to a father or mother or sister or brother or friend that you have hurt feelings with. and to just say. It seems so simple for some. For others, it isn't as easy. And certainly if there is any kind of self-esteem stuff going on with anyone, it makes it even harder, because you have to know that you deserve to be healthy, and you deserve your relationships to be healthy.
Yeah.
But as I believe Glenn said on a previous broadcast, how can you do that if you're not healthy yourself? You can't. So before anyone starts working on, their relationships, they have to do the work themselves first. And then if you have someone that is healthy, you can work on yourself while you work on that relationship. But I just think it's very difficult to work on an unhealthy relationship if you yourself struggle in that area. So the first thing to do, in my opinion, is to work on yourself. And then when you make some progress in that, then you can work on these other relationships. It's just difficult to do unless you know that you're in a relationship with a healthy person. Anyone want to comment on that? Did I say anything anyone disagrees with?
Nope.
No.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I'll comment. I just
Yeah.
wrote something. I just wrote something in the chat. If you're accepting being put down, I think a good idea to ask, why do I accept this? Even though you say nothing in the situation because you feel it's just fruitless or futile to say anything.
Right.
But just try to understand what is it about me that allows me to accept this
Good question.
unhealthy situation of allowing yourself to be put down.
Yeah.
Look, I'd be the first to acknowledge this is an extremely difficult scenario to work through, because there's a lot of side things happen when this is going on, and you're not even of clear mind to use to be able to just rationalize and just examine this stuff. But I mean, this can go on, and we've seen it through parents or other relationships, that this can go on 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years where people live in abject misery.
Yeah.
And you look at this and you say, what? These people have accepted this, and their life is busted.
Yeah.
Oh man,
it's hard.
Extremely difficult. And I don't think we should ever underplay the thought that it is difficult.
Right. That's kind of what I was getting at. Is like when we've been talking about this stuff, these topics we've been talking about for years, and sometimes we forget to. Maybe I'm talking about myself. Sometimes it seems when we talk about these things, oh yeah, just bring it to the table. Just be honest. Come to the front. Be open. Put your hand up. Just say it. Well, we've been working on these things for a while. It's easy for us to do it because we're in healthy relationships. I mean, not all of them are healthy, but I would say the four of us at least are striving toward being healthy. And so when something happens between any of us, we can bring it up, and it's a safe place to do that. But not everyone has that. So thank you for saying that, Glenn. So I don't ever want to give the idea to people that this stuff is just novel. It's just easy. It's just it should be understood that you just do this and this and this, and then you're done. But I would encourage anyone that's struggling in any of these areas. You have to start somewhere, and it's best to start with yourself, and then you can work on the other relationships. And it definitely, if you're in a relationship that to be toxic, get out. That seems easy too, but there's so much toxic stuff out there. There's so many toxic people, and even in your own families, and it just doesn't lead anywhere good. We're about to close down for the night, but I wanted to read Jamie's comment. As you get healthy, you realize you deserve to be treated right, and you set boundaries and stop accepting it. But I think that wasn't the one I wanted to share first. So Jamie says, sometimes you have to walk away from unhealthy relationships in order to become healthy yourself. And then the one that I read, as you get healthy, you realize you deserve to be treated right, and you set boundaries and stop accepting it. That's a good way to end this particular topic for tonight. Thank you for that, Jamie. Absolutely correct. sometimes you just have to walk away. We're talking about talking to the person and trying to work things out. But the key to everything that we've talked about tonight is doing what you need to do for you. And if the person's unapproachable, there are still other ways. The point is that you can do it even if you can't do it with the person. You can work these things out for yourself. So the bottom line, the closing comment for me on this particular topic, as we focused on other relationships other than romantic, thank you, Marisa, for pointing that out. This has been really, really fun, and everyone's answers have been really, really good to these questions. I feel like we've touched on a lot of good topics concerning other relationships outside of a romantic or a marriage relationship. But all of these broadcasts, what we're trying to do is talk about how you have a healthy relationship. How's that possible? What are the steps that you need to take to do that? So from tonight, I would just say that in relationship with parents, family, siblings, co-workers, people you meet online, whatever the case may be, starting with yourself first. And if you feel like the relationship is worth anything, you should always say something. If something's bothering you, if you want to have a healthy relationship, you have to find out if the other person even wants that. So that's my closing comment. Okay, so that's all the room we have for tonight. Please join us next week for Glenn's take on healthy relationships. Look forward to hearing his perspective. Thanks for joining us. And we'll say our goodnights. We'll start with Glenn. Glenn, if you have any closing comments, please say them and just say goodbye to the peoples for us.
I'll say good night, and I was just thinking, what is there anything in common across the board, right from the romantic to the person you meet sitting on the park bench to have conversation with? And I think it's, if you can bring your identity with you and not compromise it,
right,
you're off to a good start.
Lovely.
So that's my closing thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Beautiful.
Glenn. Jen, if you have any closing comments, please say them about tonight's topic, and then say goodbye to the peoples for us.
Yeah, this topic is such a great topic, and I think it's touched all of us in different ways, some similar ways, but it's one of the most powerful things to come together as people and share and recognize I'm not alone in this. Whether you're talking with someone who's been through it and they're on the other side, or someone who's still in it, it's just very beneficial to share. And I just really appreciate everybody that shared in the comments. Thank you, guys. Really touches my heart. Have a great night. Have a great week. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Thank you. For me, it was really fun to do this topic, even though I was very busy this week and so I was working on a work project as well. And I'm so glad that I was able to take the time to get this together, and you guys are so supportive with your answers, and everyone in the chat answering the questions, and so many people have said some really great things. You've really helped us out with this topic tonight, so we appreciate that. I just want to say thank you. If this is your first time listening to TSL, you're welcome. We hope that you come back. Thank you also to Marisa for bringing a lot of people over. We had some people that we didn't know come in. I've been sharing more. Marisa's been doing some promotional stuff for the channel, which we appreciate, and sharing that stuff out. So maybe some people came in that are new, and you're welcome. So thank you. Good night to everyone. We're going to let Marisa close, and I'll just say thank you for being here. If you're listening to the playback, thank you for giving us an opportunity. And all we ask is that you like and subscribe and share us out. We want more people to come to the channel, not because we're ever going to be probably monetized. I say probably. You have to get to 1,000 subscribers for that to even happen. And we're not about the money anyway. But we would like more people to be part of these discussions. That's my personal reason for that. So thank you. Everyone have a good week, and we'll see you next Sunday where we'll hear from Glenn on his perspective on healthy relationships. Marisa, any closing comments, and close us out tonight, please.
Just remember that if you're in an unhealthy relationship, and if it's whether it's parents or your other family members or a spouse or a significant other or whatever it is, remember that you have value. You deserve love and respect. And if you're not getting love and respect, then you're never going to do or say anything to elicit love and respect from those toxic people. And it's up to you to say no. It's up to you to say enough's enough. And it's up to you to take that first step forward away and out of that toxic relationship. And there are many people out there to help you in that decision and help you in that process. My mother always said, never be afraid to ask for help when you need it. So please don't. And any of us, you're welcome to contact us. If we don't have an answer for you, I know we can direct you, point you in the right direction. I've been there. We've all been there where we needed to walk away from something or someone that was bad for us. And we'd love to help other people realize their own worth and want to take control of their own health in every way. And if you need help, please reach out to us. We'll do the best we can for you. And we'll certainly be lifting you up in prayer, those of us who pray. So with that being said, looking forward to next Sunday, with the 4th installment of Talking About Healthy Relationships, which the write-up will be done by our very own Glenn. And I'm looking forward to that. Thank you, everybody, for coming. If you haven't caught it yet, please go to my channel, Nez Lover. Easy to find. I put the link in the chat of the stream that our own Jen here, Starling Swallow, did with me. Please go check it out and show her some love and support and look at her beautiful artwork. Also, please show some love and support to Jason Cripps here. He's doing another channel called Dr. Sleep. It's an ASMR relaxation channel. He'll be reading scripture and other stories and whatnot. Very relaxing. Please go check it out. I'll be doing a promo for it on my channel very soon. Thank you all for being here. And like Dr. Les Carter says, stay on Team Healthy. I love you guys. God bless you. God willing, see you next week here on True Story Live.